Minecraft Bedrock Edition has a very interesting reputation well within the Minecraft community. Search up Minecraft Bedrock and you will be greeted with a plethora of videos just absolutely shitting on this particular version. What's interesting is that despite being the most popular version by a wide margin, it's really unpopular in the YouTube landscape. You mostly see people playing the original Java edition of the game. Why is that? Why is Java the preferred way of playing Minecraft, whereas Bedrock is seemingly getting pushed to the side? Well, we asked the same question, so with that being said, Minecraft Bedrock Edition, is it any good? Let's find out. Alright, so before I start this, I'm gonna actually structure this video a bit differently than what most people would whenever they critique the Bedrock version of this game. Instead of just addressing the positive points first, I'm actually gonna address some of the problems that I have with this version, as I feel like it would be better to just go ahead and get all of my frustrations out with Bedrock first, and then move on to some of the positive points to end it off on a lighter note. Minecraft Bedrock is kind of like the lame middle child that nobody really likes except for the parents that conceive them. It started development in 2011 for the Sony Xperia Play exclusively, but it eventually came to Android and iOS later that year. Throughout the years, it would receive some major content updates, that is, until 2016, which marked the end of the Pocket Edition alpha phase, putting it into full release status. Then, in 2017, the Better Together update dropped, and in it, brought together players from across different platforms to connect to one another on a singular version of Minecraft. How fun. This is the era where they were trying to achieve some parity between Bedrock and the Legacy console editions, since most people that were moving to Bedrock came from those versions. But now that Bedrock and Java are now on the same schedule when it comes to major content releases, they've been trying to fix all of the smaller differences between the two versions, like steak being referred to as cooked beef, or the enchanting table being called the enchantment table. But without further ado, let's get into some of the negative points that I want to address. Let's get into one Bedrock feature that I'm actually not entirely against, but just have very mixed viewpoints on it. Bedrock Edition, by far, makes Mojang and Microsoft the big bucks, all thanks to, you guessed it, the marketplace. I don't think I need to go in depth as to what the marketplace is or what it consists of, because by now I'm sure all of you are well aware for the 7 years that it's been around for. Feel old yet? Yeah, me too. I'm very polarized with the existence of the marketplace, because on one hand, the idea of paying for mods is kind of taboo when it comes to modding communities, and is usually frowned upon, with some exceptions, of course. This way of handling mod distribution is an absolute far cry from how Java distributes mods. You want to know how much you pay for mods, skins, texture, and resource packs on Java Edition? None. You don't pay a dime for hardly anything you download. So for Bedrock to take a complete 180 and start putting price tags on quite literally everything you can use to customize your experience is incredibly odd. Hell, they even have individual clothing cosmetics for custom characters that sometimes goes for a couple bucks. It's kind of ludicrous. But not that ludicrous, though. Now, it's not all bad. The marketplace does have a couple of redeeming qualities that I can at least appreciate. First and foremost, it offers creators the ability to make a living just by simply creating and publishing content. There are people in Java modding communities that have moved over to release mods for Bedrock simply because they're able to make a profit off of their creations. This is a huge deal breaker for a lot of people, not to mention that Mojang makes it incredibly easy for creators to develop content for Bedrock within the tools that it provides for them. The other point I want to make is that it's incredibly straightforward to install and use anything you buy on the marketplace. It's literally one button click and a quick navigation to the resource packs in your world to enable them. It's that simple. Now, yes, I know that Java mods are usually on a much bigger scale, but Bedrock isn't too far behind. Mods like Realism Craft and Better on Bedrock completely transformed the look and feel of the game entirely. It's getting better is what I'm trying to get at, and I don't think it's fair to undermine a lot of the work these people put into the mods simply because it was released on a version they looked down upon. Alright, enough glazing, let's beat the dead horse already. You know how you can pause the game on literally every other version of Minecraft in existence? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Just hit a button and the game just freezes. Ever need to take a pee break but worried about potentially sitting out in the open and getting absolutely folded by whatever lies out in the woods that you for some reason decided to venture through alone and unarmed because you're an absolute psychopath? Well, you can just pause the game while you do your funny business and come back where you started as if nothing happened. Now, let's try doing this on Bedrock. Okay, no, seriously, why does Bedrock lack one of the most basic features that a video game could have? I know that Pocket Edition never had one back when it was in early development for 5 years, but you would have thought by now that they would have incorporated a pausing mechanic, especially since this same version was being ported to consoles and PCs, which, by the way, had or have versions of Minecraft that allow you to do such a basic function like pausing the game. And in case you're wondering, no, turning off LAN and online multiplayer in the world settings doesn't change a thing. Why is this even on by default anyways? I know it's done for the sake of convenience so that you don't have to leave the world, go to your settings, and turn it on from there, but my god, it's so annoying. I feel like most people will make a conscious decision to play alone most of the time whenever they load up a world, or maybe I just don't have many friends that play this game. Let's move on to another nitpick that I have with the game, and that is just how the game feels to play. Now, what exactly do I mean by this? I'm not referring to the overall game performance, such as frame rates, frame times, or just how fast the chunk loading is. I'm just talking about the stuff that you do out in the world you set foot in, from as simple as opening your inventory to opening chests. If you're on a relatively powerful device, you might not experience some of its inconsistencies. Emphasis on the word might. Bedrock is bipolar. There are times where it feels incredibly smooth. No hiccups, no weird delays in between actions, none of that. Then, there are times where my game will stall trying to load the contents of a chest or opening my inventory. As a matter of fact, the entire version feels like I've joined a world that my friend has hosted who has really good internet, but you can still kind of tell you're playing on a server that you aren't hosting because there's still a slight delay in between almost everything. That is the best way I can describe the overall game feel of Bedrock. So editing me here, you're gonna notice a very slight shift in tone from here on out. I basically lost like 2/3 of the initial recording of the commentary. I basically just had to re-record everything. So if I sound like I'm tired or like slightly annoyed, you know why. So hope you guys understand. It's not a huge deal for some people, as some of you Bedrockers might have gotten used to it by now, but it is something that I felt was definitely worth mentioning, and I feel like not enough people talk about this whenever people make videos about Bedrock's underlying problems. Let's move on to another issue that I have, and that is the overall performance. Now, you would think that Bedrock would receive tons of optimizations under the hood because it has to accommodate for so many different platforms that it's available on. Different types of hardware and architecture means that different methods had to be used to optimize the game to a T for each system. Now, what if I told you that they actually fixed the performance issues on older hardware? I am lying to you. As a matter of fact, their one attempt at optimizing the game was by changing the file type of the worlds you had from the UWP format to GDK. You don't need to be a genius to know that doing something like this is incredibly sketch. Changing file formats to a world could be potentially devastating if proper testing wasn't issued. So, this update was supposedly going to improve the overall performance of the game by swapping out the world file type, but it inadvertently ended up deleting everyone's world. It didn't even matter if you had backups stored, because unless you were on PC, those backups were also converted, and were Thanos snapped out of existence like the rest of them. The next problem I have is chat filtering. I recently found the text file in the game's directory that lists off all the words that are blacklisted by the game, and while I can't show them all to you for obvious reasons, there are a ton of words that I cannot say here. Now, this might be a good thing, right? There are tons of kids that play this game, so filtering out certain words so that they're not going to get exposed to it is a good thing. This entire feature is good. I'm not complaining about it at all. When it can be disabled. Bedrock does not give you the ability to turn off chat filtering in the settings. None. Nowhere. The option straight up doesn't exist. This is an obvious no-brainer here. I feel like they should just allow us to turn off chat filtering, at least on a per-account basis. I could see why they wouldn't allow this option to be turned off for Worlds, but if the option was just in the settings and the people who have it turned off can only see what the person typed in, I believe that's a good thing. Not everyone that plays this game are children. Java doesn't have such a thing, except on Realms. Now, this video so far is not painting a good look for Bedrock, and you probably think I hate Bedrock Edition, right? Not at all. There are a lot of good things that Bedrock does right, and hell, dare I say better than Java in a lot of ways. We got potion-filled and dyeable water cauldrons, crossplay, the insane render distance you can set, the Wither. Before I talk about all that, let's go into one of the features that I really enjoy. And one of those features is being able to dye water in cauldrons. Dyeable water cauldrons are really, really nice to have. You might think that it's really inconvenient needing a cauldron in order to be able to dye your armor. And while that process is a lot more complicated than just using the crafting grid, it allows you to make a lot more color options for your armor. Ever wanted your armor to be a bluish purple? Just put normal purple dye and mix it with a blue dye and you have yourself a really nice color that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get with the basic crafting grid. This gives the cauldron a lot more uses than just being able to store water, lava, and powdered snow? Okay. Speaking of cauldrons, ever wanted to put your diabolical creations in them? Potions and cauldrons are an absolute godsend, and I have no idea why this isn't in Java. Now, what use does this have? Well, it's the only way to actually make potion-tipped arrows, and I am all for it. This feature just straight up doesn't exist in Java. You want to know the crafting recipe for potion-tipped arrows? 8 arrows, and a lingering potion. You know, the type of potion that requires you to obtain dragon's breath from the ender dragon, and it only gives you 8 tipped arrows from one potion. I've had many of my friends who exclusively play Java just shocked when they realized they could just fill up a cauldron with potions and just get a full stack of tipped arrows very easily. And speaking of playing with friends, native crossplay anyone? This is a feature that we absolutely take for granted nowadays, as it's become the norm in the gaming industry to incorporate it into almost every game out there that has some form of multiplayer connectivity. And being able to play with anyone no matter what device they're playing on is such a super cool concept. Back then, we didn't have this type of functionality. You might remember the glory days of the legacy console editions, but they actually never had any crossplay capabilities. Whatever console you were playing on, you were stuck playing with the same pool of players, and that sucked, especially when you consider just how many different editions there were of Minecraft that existed on different consoles. Of course, Bedrock didn't support all platforms when it officially released, thanks Sony. However, eventually in late 2019, Sony finally caved in and allowed all PlayStation players to play with everyone else in the sandbox. This gets even better when you figure out that there's a way for Bedrock players to connect to Java servers. The mad scientist over at Geyser MC somehow found a way to bridge the gap separating Bedrock with the help of a single server. This is arguably the coolest shit that I have ever seen, and I don't know what type of black magic they had to pull off to make this work. People have been speculating at the idea of Java and Bedrock hanging out together in one server ever since Bedrock officially came out, and that dream can finally become reality. Of course, it does take some setting up to do in order to get it working, but it's really not that complicated once you get into the meat of it. If you know how to port forward, it's incredibly simple to do. So yeah, Bedrock and Java players are absolutely in heaven right now, and Mojang and Microsoft should be incredibly thankful at the hard work that their community puts into their game. Alright, I'm horrible with transitions. Let's talk about Bedrock renders chunks a lot differently than Java. The process here is a lot more efficient on the hardware, and the chunk loading is generally a lot faster. This makes it possible to set render distances beyond the maximum 32 that Java has set. Ever wanted 96 chunk of render distance? Well, if your hardware is powerful enough, you can do just that. It may not run that well, but the fact that this is even possible at all is absolutely incredible. It might not be a huge deal for some players. I feel like most of us would just usually stick to 18 to 24 chunks of render in most of our survival playthroughs. But seeing biomes that are over 1,000 blocks away from where you're standing is such a cool sight to see. The last positive thing I want to talk about are the armor stands. Armor stands in Bedrock are able to hold certain weapons or tools that you give them, and can even pose if you right click on them. Oh, and you can make them dab if you want. It's cool, I guess. Now, this is really, really cool. Why isn't this an option in Java? It does exist, but only through the use of commands. This could make for some really cool decorations outside and inside of bases. There's a lot of cool things you can just do with this, and I feel like it would make more people use them more than they already do. There are some other things I didn't mention, such as pistons being able to move certain blocks like chests and furnaces, the fact that renaming your tools only costs 1 experience point, the high drop rate for tridents, and a lot more. So, is Minecraft Bedrock Edition any good? Well, it really boils down to what you prefer. When choosing a Minecraft version, you make a conscious decision knowing that there will be certain features lacking that are absent in one version but present in the other. A big factor for a lot of people is just due to how accessible Bedrock is. It's quite literally on everything nowadays. It even got ported to the Chromebook recently, so that all those kids in school could play instead of being productive and doing schoolwork. I don't think we should judge people for preferring one version over the other, and I mostly speak for the Java community, because for every time that I bring up Bedrock to my friends, they perceive the version as a cheap copy and not the real version. I had one friend say that Java Edition was, quote unquote, the version for real men. As opposed to what? I don't think any of these claims are necessarily fair, as Bedrock has just a lot going for it. Some people may not have a choice at all but to play Bedrock, as the only platform that Java is available on is PC and nothing else. But what do I think of Bedrock Edition? Well, I think it's solid. There are some issues here and there, but there's also a few gems, and that's the type of stuff that I love to see. But is it any good? Well, I'll let you guys decide in the comments. Thanks for watching.